Welcome everybody to Global Economy Updates. So every fortnight, Stephen takes a look at what's happening around the world and more importantly, what it could mean for you. So tonight, we're connecting the dots between the Middle East, Ukraine, the Caspian Sea, global energy routes, and even what's happening with superannuation here in Australia. So there's a lot shifting very quickly, so let's get into it. Where do you want to start, Stephen?
Yeah, look, thanks everyone for being here. I just wanted to do a bit of an update on what I'm seeing happening and people that I'm talking to are seeing happening in the Middle East. And when I say the Middle East, it's the CIS states, and the CIS states are all the old USSR states, the stands, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Uzbekistan, basically everything around the Caspian Sea. So if you're not sure where the Caspian Sea is, you've got uh, Turkey, Black Sea, Caspian Sea, right? Landlocked sea, lost a lot of water over the years, but it's a very vital inland waterway that five countries pretty much touch on and control. No UN interference there, no US or anyone like that trying to interfere in the area, but it's very large oil and gas reserves underneath it. It's also an easy way for Russia to get stuff down south through it into places like Azerbaijan and Turkmenistan and even Iran, because Iran's got a small part of it. So I just thought we'd look at some things that are happening in the area that are basically changing the whole dynamic of what's going on in that region and has massive effects for where things are going to end up over the next 4 or 5 decades. Um,
Mm.
it's really going to underline the changing nature of what we're seeing with the change of empires.
Mm. Okay. And historically, the Caspian Sea, the Caspian is what? Is famous for the beluga caviar
Yeah.
outside.
Well, it's actually not beluga caviar. It's actually Caspian caviar. So the caviar
Oh.
market is actually quite interesting. Um, the Russians control most of the natural caviar in the world, and then
Mm-hmm.
all the wokies out of Europe basically said that you can no longer use natural caviar, so you can't grow and use the sturgeon in the wild. But Russia, being Russia, and Azerbaijan, which has the best caviar in the world, but has the smallest market share, basically told everyone to go and get nicked. So the European wokies pretty much started putting sanctions on the beluga caviar, which is what the Russians use
Mm.
for farmed caviar in places like Thailand and Turkey and that sort of stuff, which the quality is very, very low, but they pass it off as wild caught
Mm.
caviar. So yeah, there's a little bit of info on the caviar market.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find it fascinating. So there's five countries surrounding the Caspian
Mhm.
Sea, and it basically contains a lot of substantial resources like oil, natural gas, and all that energy
Yeah, a
infrastructure.
lot. Yeah.
Uh,
The you got it. So back in the days when the USSR was around, the Caspian Sea, apart from a little bit that touches Iran down the bottom, was totally controlled by Russia.
mm,
And um, they knew, and they'd done a lot of exploration during the USSR days on what was underneath the seabed
mm,
of the Caspian Sea and what was around the edges. So if you have a look at a lot of the countries that are around and touch the Caspian Sea, their onshore oil is all alongside the Caspian Sea, right? And so are most of the natural gas deposits. Then, when you start going out into the waterways, there is some very large gas fields, especially Iran's just opened one
mm.
in their part of the Caspian Sea. Azerbaijan's been slowly tapping into it. But at this stage, it's only about probably 8 to 10% explored or tapped. Um,
Well.
and the current resources they've got coming out of there is huge. So by the time they go through and tap the rest of it, there'll be so much oil and gas coming out of that region that it'll just basically dwarf Saudi Arabia. And
Amazing.
and a lot of it's known, but they just don't publicize it, because it's all old USSR numbers. The other thing that makes that region very important is it's pretty much smack bang dang in the middle between China and Europe. So you've
Mm.
got Russia in the top, China
Yep.
over here, the
Yep.
Caspian Sea and all the Stan states, and that just connects everything up into Europe. So um, but not just Europe, you've got Turkey in the way there. So everything that goes through Saudi Arabia or goes through the Gulf states no longer has to, because the pipelines and everything that are going to be built through that area. So you're going to have all the shipping routes and everything and diminish, and a lot of the more of the oil and gas that's going to be required by Asia, specifically Asia, because it's the fastest growing area at the moment, will all come overland eventually. So
Amazing. So what about geopolitical importance there, Stephen? So no US Navy operates there?
no US Navy operates there. It's pretty much all controlled by Russia and a little bit by Iran.
Right.
Uh, China has a little bit of influence in the area, but mainly from aerial thing. So there's no influence from the US, and that's why everything will go overland, and it'll really create pretty much a super highway through the whole area.
Okay, so what's changed around there, Stephen?
Um, what's changed is the basically the sanctions on Russia.
Right.
So from basically 2014 onwards, when a lot of the stuff was starting to happen with Ukraine, uh, and then the sanctions started to be forced on Russia and all that, all those states and that started to go, well, if they can do that to Russia, which is, big brother, they can do it to us. So they've all started to look at their own industries. They've all started to look at new markets, and they've all started to create new alliances with those that they see are more aligned with where they want to be in the future. And that's
Mm.
pretty much all the BRIC states. So that's why you're going to see a strengthening of the BRICS over time. That's also why you've seen a country like the UAE leave OPEC, and you'll find that it will join more and more with these other nations that aren't in OPEC. And that they'll start trading amongst themselves rather than trading with, the likes of Australia and that sort of stuff. So it could actually be very detrimental to us, uh,
Mm.
because if you've got the Middle East in a long-term war, we could be very much looking at higher energy prices, purely and simply because the chokehold of oil and natural gas and other things that are required for the stuff that we need are going to be tied up more and more with Asia. And they'll just stop looking at us as a market. Really, at the end of the day, we're not that big a market. The bigger markets are India, Pakistan, Indonesia. We're surrounded by markets that dwarf us. So they could quite easily just cut us off.
Mm. So I read somewhere that the Caspian used to be protected by geography. So
Mm.
drone warfare is changing what geography means. So looking at the long range drones.
Yeah. But the long range drones, the people that are going to look to target the Caspian Sea are going to be the Europeans,
Right.
so that they can, try and turn off the tap coming from that region and get oil. But they need the whole of Europe is based on what they call the Eastern Bloc. So Russia, Hungary, Turkey, all the oil and energy coming from those nations into Europe. Europe thinks they can do it with windmills and unicorn farts. It's got no hope. That's why they're turning back to nuclear energy, and Europe will turn back to nuclear energy in probably the fastest rate, other than the US, of anyone else in the world, because they'll realise that they won't be able to get their energy from anywhere else, and that will also drive their electrification. So when you cut off from fuels, they'll drive, their buses and cars and all that sort of stuff more electric, which is fine for Europe because you drive 3 hours and you've basically gone across the entire continent. But um, but what it also does is then it exposes them to the largest manufacturers of those vehicles, being Asia. So
Hmm.
Asia can just turn the tap off for supplying those vehicles or supplying all that equipment that they need, and then they'll be back to trying to restart a manufacturing base. Volkswagen and the likes are already shutting down industry. Volvo is owned by Geely in China. Half the manufacturing plants in Asia are owned by Chinese manufacturers now, as
Hmm.
the autos turn them down. You've got Renault and Seat in Spain that are re-emerging as local manufacturers as they go. So it's quite an interesting shift, but the whole geopolitics has been thrown on its head, and it's been thrown on its head because Europe started it. Right.
Mm.
They'll say they're doing it because they're the good guys. Well, actually, they're the bad guys because
Mm.
all they're doing is forcing everything um, away from the West because all these nations are going, we don't need them.
Mm.
We're now a bigger trading bloc. And you got to remember, trade is what keeps nations at peace,
Yes.
right? So as soon as you start putting sanctions on, or you start saying you can't use this or you can't do that, any form of sanction is actually a form of war.
Mm.
And Europe is has been leading this since pretty much the early 2000s. Um, and they've been, you know, sanction masters, and America with their swift cutoffs. America's doing it for a different reason because they want to strengthen their Western Hemisphere bubble, and that's fine. They can
Mm.
go and live in their own bubble, but the biggest loser out of all this will be Europe. Europe will become a wasteland of a place,
Mm.
especially after 2032. It'll break up into many, many different countries. It'll break up into different ethnic units and everything as if it was back in you know, the mid 1700s type of stuff.
Well, in my travels, meeting Germans, they're letting me know that it's affected their country for sure.
Oh yeah.
Everything's moving to China, and it's just brought the economy down. And for the young ones, there's no kind of future to build wealth, or no encouragement to for them in the future, basically, because everything's moving overseas.
Yeah, but it's also all those Germans that are telling you that they're the ones that have done it to themselves because they're the ones that have voted it all in. Right.
Mm.
And that's the biggest problem with Europe is that it's not learning from its mistakes.
Mm.
If you have a look at their polling numbers, and this is why we always say politics matters. If you have a look at their polling numbers, they just keep voting for the same shit. Right.
Mm.
There is small rises of the right and there is small rises of people that want to change it, but have a look at Hungary. Right. The left changed their tactics, and now Hungary's got a guy in that is basically doing whatever the EU wants.
Mm. He's a yes.
Um, is a yes man. Giorgia Meloni in Italy hasn't she on some things she's fantastic, on others she bows to the EU.
Mm.
Right, and that is what is happening through is that they talk one thing, get elected, they go half the measure, and they don't go all the way, and that's what will be the downfall of Europe. So,
Mm. So, moving to Russia, Ukraine, and Iran, are the wars beginning to connect with what's happening?
oh, 100%. And this was always going to happen. And I think it's always part of the plan. It's definitely part of Netanyahu's plan. His warmongering is going to drive the world into World War III faster than anything. Um, we've now seen shots between Ukraine on Russia and then Ukraine on Iranian vessels. and stuff that have been plying in the Caspian Sea, as well as in the Black Sea. And so whoever's directing Ukraine, and I dare say it's going to be the Europeans, they're trying to merge the two wars, and the reason for that is the US are okay playing with Iran. They don't want to get involved in playing on the battlefield with Ukraine. They're
Mm.
trying to force the Europeans into that, and the Europeans can't do it. They just don't have the manpower, the money, the machinery, or anything to do it. So what they want to do is they want to orchestrate it so that America has no choice but to put boots on the ground in the whole region. As soon as that happens, that's the end of the US,
Mm.
because
It doesn't matter.
it'll be back into another war. The people will turn on both sides of politics over there, and the place will just fucking go into total meltdown. So we're at a point of if these two wars emerge, um, if you're in Europe, run very fucking fast because it'll be a shit place. Like you might as well leave it to the North Africans to manage because there'll be food shortages, there'll be energy shortages, there'll be um, mass drafts into the army and the defense forces and that it'll be an absolute nightmare. We'll be back into an on the ground as well as a drone war. So
Yeah, so if there was a major escalation then in the whole scenario, what would happen? So if Iran
it just
directly attacks Ukraine territory, what happens?
it then just snowballs.
Mm.
But it also then gets to the point where um, someone walks into Putin's office and shoots him. The next
Oh.
guy takes over and just opens up the big red button and hits it. That's the type of stuff that would happen. Um, there is people in behind Putin that want to end this and they want to end it with a nuclear weapon. Um, there's people in Israel that want to end Iran with a nuclear weapon. There's people in Iran that want to end everyone with a nuclear weapon. There's people in Europe that want to end Russia with a nuclear weapon. Uh,
Mm.
this will end up in nuclear war. There's nearly no scenario if these two wars collide and the carnage that comes from that. Because you've got to also remember that you've got so Ukraine's no longer is out of producing a lot of wheat. Its wheat harvest is way down.
Mm.
So that means that a lot of the wheat that went into Europe is got to be sourced elsewhere. Good for Australia. Um, but that'll only live for so long because then you won't be able to get it there by ship because you'll have blockades, from shipping. So that's going to be massive shortages of food in the area. You'll have energy rationing and shortages. So you'll have your production of factories and all that sort of stuff going into, you know, like war. Well, will be war-like footings where they're working 5 hours a day
Mm.
because that's all the energy they can get. You'll have mass immigration problems of Europeans trying to flee Europe. It'll be uh, it it'll be bigger than World War II in the size of the people fleeing and starvation and the wreckage. And if it does get to the stage where someone drops a bomb, it'll be hell, absolute hell, in that region. So if there is places in Europe you want to go and visit, I would say you do it in the next 12 months, because after that, she'll be a no-fly zone.
Well, you've been talking about it for months, Stephen. So the risk
Yeah,
is escalating.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I first saw this happening. Um, I would say at the beginning of the Ukraine war, like the shooting war, not when the Ukraine war actually started in 2014. Um, when that was the diplomatic part of the Ukraine war started in 2014. The on the ground shooting that started in 2022 was the culmination. And ever since then, I've said that this is always going to happen, that it will merge, the wars will merge, and then the attack on Europe will begin. So
So what you're seeing there, Stephen, is just darkness at the moment.
total darkness, total darkness for Europe. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Some good bright spots around it, but that's off the back of humanitarian aid type stuff, and because of the changes, so there'll be lots of opportunity, short-term opportunism that can be handled because that's what war brings,
Mm.
and then long-term changes in how things happen. Now, out of that could come some very, very good stuff. What that is at the moment, I can't see it being what it would actually be. It's probably a little bit too far off. Yeah, so.
So be selective of which part of Europe you want to go and set up globally, right?
100%, 100%. Be very, very careful of Europe. Yeah.
Mm. So let's move to Middle East, Stephen. New oil and trade corridors. Tell us
Yeah.
about what's happened
So
last 2 weeks.
there's some interesting stuff starting to happen. And as soon as the Iran war started, we saw the East-West pipeline open in Saudi Arabia. We saw the UAE guys open up their new pipeline into Fallujah, and then they've doubled that. What we're also seeing is Iraq opening up the old pipelines that run up through Syria. And then Syria uh, is, because they're all overland routes, right? And these overland routes are going to be protected by basically the new empire, right? Because they're going to want them more than anything. And then you're going to see this go straight through and across. So you're going to have sort of Iraq, Syria into Turkey. Turkey has all the refining capacity that it wants, and then so all the oil coming out of Iraq, which will open up oil from Kuwait, Afghanistan on the back corner there. Some of the Iranian stuff can come through. You'll probably even have oil from the northern parts of Saudi
Mm.
start coming through, and then going in all overland, where most of this oil at the moment is all shipped by ship, by sea. So all the Iraqi stuff comes down through the Gulf, goes around up through the Suez Canal into Turkey, or it comes down through and across into Asia.
Mm.
What'll happen now is they'll reduce the shipping fleets. It'll go Iraq, Syria, Turkey, but then Turkey links up with oil pipelines heading east, um,
Mm.
you know, straight the way across basically into China and India.
Mm.
Right. So there'll be a lot of oil that can move all the way around the world into the major markets that no longer needs shipping routes, which means that the Strait of Hormuz is less and less of a conflict, and same with El Amid, the Red Sea choke point between Somalia and Saudi and the Houthis and Yemen down there. So these pipelines are going to be super important, and watch heaps of them get built. I'm talking tens of thousands of kilometers of pipeline being laid. Now, some of them are also being touted as fiber optic cable lines as well. So they'll put oil pipelines, gas pipelines. Um, some of them may even house water, because water in that area is a massive commodity, and then fiber optics. Fiber optics, the undersea cables are the backbone of the world's economy.
Mm.
Uh, the Strait of Hormuz, the main war or the main effort there is not about the ships transporting oil or goods or whatever. It's about protecting the undersea cables.
Mm.
If those undersea cables were all cut, and there's something like 60 of them that run through that area, if they cut all 60 of them, the world basically goes dark.
Mm.
Your internet would stop working because of the way that uh, the way that the world is distributed with its data. You would have banking systems that wouldn't operate. right? And we wouldn't have enough satellite capacity to fill in the gap. Mobile phone calls between here and Europe wouldn't work.
Mm,
They all go through those cables, right?
mm,
They are what the US is protecting. They're not
mm,
protecting the oil routes because they don't need the oil. They've got enough oil over in the Western
mm,
Hemisphere. They get enough of it out of Venezuela. You've got to
mm,
remember, Venezuela's got more oil than pretty much the Middle East. So they don't need it. Cuba's got oil,
mm.
right? But they just don't tap it. The Gulf of Mexico is probably only 30 or 40% explored for oil. They just got to get into the deeper parts of it. The Mexico side of the Gulf of Mexico, or the Gulf of America in Trump terms, is pretty much only like 20% explored
Jeez.
compared to the Texas, Louisiana side, the American side. So America doesn't care about the oil, it cares about the data.
Of
Uh,
course.
and the data is more important than anything else. And then, so that'll lead now to cables being run over land. The reason that they use the ocean is it's cheaper to lay cables in the ocean than it is
Mm,
to run them overland.
mm,
And because there's less disputes. Right? Once you get 12 nautical miles off someone's coast, you've only got the International Seabed Authority to deal with, right? Which is one agency all around the world, right? And in most places, they don't even cover the seabed. Like in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, they don't even cover the seabed. That it's basically just lay your cable, so you don't need permission. But if you're trying to do it overland, you imagine trying to, put a cable between, Perth and Kalgoorlie, or Brisbane and
a
Sydney.
nightmare.
Yeah, all the councils, all the states,
Mm.
all
Oh my
the people that you
gosh.
got to deal with. So that's why they don't do it. It's
Mm.
just a logistical nightmare. But running a cable under the sea, easy done. It's not
Does it
cheap.
come
Easy
does
done.
it come under something like maritime law? No?
No, no. Maritime law is so maritime law is basically all about vessels and vessels on the high sea.
Okay.
The seabed is actually a different authority again.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So, talking about all these things, Stephen, so Syria could re-emerge as an important part for energy corridor, for trade corridor.
yeah.
Yeah, the data fiber, obviously, and the link
Um,
between the Gulf and Europe.
Yeah, 100%. With the overland routes, Syria is in a very, very strategic position. Turkey,
Mm.
Syria, all the Gulf nations. And then over the top here, you've got Uzbekistan. Right? Uzbekistan runs across the top of the Caspian Sea and links
Mhm.
basically China, Russia, and Hungary into those areas. And that's why you'll see Syria being the major connection points for the southern part of the Caspian area, if you want to call it that, and then Uzbekistan being the major point for the northern part. And at the moment, there's a couple of highways and railways being built. There's one through India into Pakistan. Once it goes through Pakistan and into Afghanistan, and it ends up in its way through into Syria. Then Pakistan from the Gulf, from the Indian Ocean, Gwadar, I think it is, goes up through Pakistan, through Afghanistan, through Syria, into Turkey. And then from Turkey, it connects to the rest of Europe. So you've got these massive trade corridors opening with rail and truck. Once again, Suez Canal's no longer needed. You've got protection from basically BRIC ally nations that are all working together, and they all want the trade. So uh, all these little things that seem random at first, when you step back and start having a look at them, they're not random at all.
Mm.
They're all being funded by China, by India, by Russia, because that's how they see the trade network happening, and they're all tapping into the vast energy network that's in that area.
Yeah, it's all strategic, really, isn't it?
100%, 100%
Mm.
it's strategic. Then you've got the Europeans, you've got the idiots here in this country who just have no idea what the global chess moves are that are happening, and they're weakening Australia more and more um, by being idiots, really. So
For sure. I've got a question here, Stephen, from Michelle. I think this is in regards to us talking about Europe, darkness. Her daughter is in Ireland. So will that be in the mix of what's happening? Is it going to be touched by what's happening in Europe?
yeah, not to as great a degree as mainland Europe, but yes, it will be touched. Um, you've got to remember most of their food, their energy, and everything comes from Europe, comes from mainland Europe, or comes from North Africa. So all that's going to um, be caught up in the mix. The UK,
Mm.
Ireland.
Mm. All right, moving along to UAE and Fujairah. Is that how you said Fujairah?
Yeah, Fujairah or Fujairah.
Fujairah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
UAE already transports oil from Abu Dhabi across the country to Fujairah. Sorry, just this pronunciation.
Fallujah. So, so Fallujah
Fujairah.
is one of the seven Emirates. There's seven Emirates that make up the UAE.
Mhm.
I always get them wrong. There's uh, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Sharjah, Al Amin, Rush Al Khamenei, Fallujah, and I'm missing one. It's the really little one that's tucked in behind Sharjah. Um, anyway, so
Fujairah.
what's that?
Oh, someone's thanks.
Arjiman.
Yeah,
Arj,
Matt. No,
Arjiman. It's where the
Archman. Yeah, Matt. Shirley
Arjiman.
said Archman.
Yeah. It's where the desert tribes are. It's where you go when you go do your desert thing. You go to Arjiman. Great little city, actually. Um, so what Fallujah is? So Fallujah for the UAE and for Saudi is on the Indian Ocean. So
Mm,
it's the other side of the Strait of Hormuz. So the east, if you link the east-west pipeline in Saudi with the pipeline that runs all the way through the UAE to Fallujah, all of a sudden you can connect the oil from the northern areas, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain. They're building pipelines down into there. So the new big port will be Fallujah. Right, so they're moving all their oil infrastructure and everything, so it's on the other side of the Strait of Hormuz. Right, so
mm,
once again, getting around the Strait of Hormuz using pipelines. So Fallujah is now a very strategic, important port for the UAE. The next one down from that is the very large port in Muscat, or just north of Muscat, in
mm,
Oman, which is a very good ally of Saudi and the UAE, where Yemen on the other corner of that peninsula basically just proxies for Iran. So they're moving their infrastructure up into that corner, and then that gives them direct access to Pakistan, India, and then across into Asia. So it's a very strategic move. So it's all part of the chess game, and that's going on at the moment in the Middle East. Um, so if you look at everything that's going on, we'll have a very interesting outcome for global share, especially for global shipping. If you're in global shipping at the moment running oil tankers, you are, and you're looking at this going, there's not going to be such a great demand for oil tankers in the next 20, 30 years with all these
mm.
pipelines. So,
Oh, absolutely. So, big question, Stephen. So, are Gulf states preparing for a world where Hamas can no longer be assumed to remain safe?
yes. But more from the standpoint of data than they are for oil because they can get around the oil. They
Mm,
can't quite get around the data thing at the moment. And the UAE was gearing up to be the data center capital of that part of the world. Right? They've got massive data center projects that they're doing because so once again, if you're looking at the system, they built a nuclear power station with
Mm,
5 reactors when they only needed 3.
mm,
Right? So why would you add 40% capacity? It's because you're going to data centers. They've got desalination plants that aren't used for water into the public utilities section that are sitting there filling big lakes at the moment. They're
mm,
for cooling for data centers, right? So they've been building all the underlying infrastructure, and the two major things needed, power and water, for massive, massive data centers because the cables already go through their front door,
mm,
right? They go right past them. So they just tap into those, and then all of a sudden they're the data center capital. Now they are looking at what happens with that, whether they still do that or not. I think they'll still go ahead with it, but it won't be as big a focus as what people think, because of the danger and the longevity of what's going to happen around Iran
mm,
and that.
mm,
So. Um, the UAE will still play a very important role. It'll still be a very good place to go. But as we mentioned in our last one, when we're talking about financial centers and that, with
mm,
places like Bali creating a financial center basically targeting Australia, Singapore, Tokyo, and that,
mm,
um, the UAE will lose out to that. So Indonesia's got a data center strategy as well, especially around Batam Island, which is
mm,
just south of Singapore. It's like a 20-minute ferry ride from Singapore.
mm.
It's been declared a special economic zone, uh, basically in a time frame that's only in the last few months, and they're putting in massive amounts of power. Right, something ridiculous. They got so at the moment the island consumes something like 600 megawatts of power because there's aluminium smelting and all that there, but they're building generation for about 4 gigawatts. Like that's just ridiculous amounts of increase in power, and the only reason you would do that is if you're going to target data centers. So.
I mean, talking to the locals here, Stephen, one of them said to me that Microsoft has already moved in.
Yeah,
Mm,
Microsoft's already on the island. Google's already in Bali.
mm.
Um, uh, uh, what was the other group that moved in when I was up there? I noticed um, Tencent from China, the
Mm.
big Chinese group. They're in Bali. They're I think they power Gojek, um, the um, the
Uh,
right
the
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 little
grad.
motorbike. Yeah, the grab version. The So you've got Gojek up there, which is which has been bought. I think it's been bought now by Grab. Um, so you've got a lot of people already moving into the area. Bali will go up market.
Mm.
Um, as one of the guys I was talking to the other day said, he said all the bogans will go to Lombok, right? Um, and he said Bali will come up market.
That's good news, Stephen.
Yes. Yes, get rid of
Really
all,
good
all the
news.
get rid of all the bogans.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, as long as they don't mess with me in Sanwa, so, or so I should say Sanua. So, but anyway, there is big changes happening, and as I've always said, if you follow the money and where the money's being spent, you can actually see these changes in real life. Like, so if you're looking to create large scale industry and large scale changes,
Mm,
money into infrastructure and especially power and water are your two leading indicators. So
mm,
if you're seeing people building large scale energy projects, coal, Indonesia's building coal powered fire stations like they're going out of fashion, the
yeah.
Middle East building nuclear plants, these are all leading indicators of where they're moving.
Mm.
Uh,
And it's
And you just
certainly
got
a
to
lot of
watch.
action happening here.
Yeah.
So, so moving from Bali to Oz. Albo is coming after your super. So what's the factual on this, Stephen?
Oh, I've been saying this for years and years and years that at some point in time they're going to come after two things: your family home
Mm,
uh, and your super. Um, in indirectly from the CGT changes that have just happened, they've attacked the family home, right? And they've attacked the family home because the market is depressing, right? In some places in Sydney and Melbourne, it's already down 20%. We
mm,
haven't seen that in 50 years, right? That's huge. This is 1970 type stuff. Um, so and it's look, it's not overall market, but it's pockets. One of the things that one of the commentators was saying the other day was that normally the top end of town, the market doesn't change, right?
mm,
People buying $10 million homes buy $10 million homes. He's noticed a change in that end of the market.
mm,
When that happens, that means confidence is gone, right? And when total confidence in the government is gone, one, it allows them to do whatever they want because people go, fuck it, I've had enough, I'm out of here.
mm,
Um, and two, um, start watching what the people in the know are doing, right? So Albo, Jim Chalmers, and all these merry men, they're saying one thing and doing another. They're not going to the same standards that they hold everyone else out to be. So they are just running the agenda. All right. Super is on that agenda. It was set up by the pig farmer. Um, I've just lost his name, Paul Keating. And he even told everyone when it was set up what was going to happen. The unions were going to get rich and the government was going to have a big pile of money. He basically said it to everyone when he set it up. The reason that they'll force a lot into super is two reasons. One, it's the backbone of what keeps the ALP and the union movement fed with cash. It's the largest contributor, something like 25 to $30 million a year directly to the ALP.
mm.
When I say directly, it comes through different avenues, but ends up in the pockets of the ALP. You know, whether it's through donations from super funds or whatever, or there is a couple of companies that are associated with the ALP that are shareholders in the major governing bodies of industry super funds. Industry super funds are 80% of the market, right? 70 to 80% of the market. So that's where most of the money is. Two, they control what super funds can invest in. So at the
Mhm.
stroke of a pen, you know, at any point in time, they can pass legislation and they will do it while they've got the 94 seats in the lower house and they can get stuff through the Senate, um, where they will change what superannuation has to be invested into. It's happened before. Howard did it. Um, Rudd did it. Uh, Heaps of people, different prime ministers over the years and treasurers have done it. They have changed what the makeup is. All they have to do is say 50% of all industry super and private self-managed super has to be invested into government bonds.
Wow.
They can do that. They can do it. The legislation is probably even written,
Mm.
right? And they can do that. So that means that every industry super fund, so there's what, 2.4, let's just say, sorry, $4.5 trillion in super,
Yes. 4.5
right?
trillion. That's
Four and a half
huge.
trillion. So
Yeah.
four times our debt.
Mm,
So they can say 50% of that, $2.2 trillion
mm-hmm.
has to be invested into government bonds. All of a sudden, our debt is technically wiped out because it's underpinned by the Australian people, and the government gets another $1.2 trillion to spend.
Double dipping.
Not only are they going to double dip, they'll wipe you out.
Mm,
And so, yeah, super is is a is becoming a very hard vehicle, um, for my mind, a hard vehicle to keep investing into. Different if you're depend, and it also depends on where you are in the scale, right? If you're retirement age and you can roll it out, take the lump sum, reinvest it into, say, long-term property or other assets of that ilk, or long-term bonds or something through, Singapore or Hong Kong or something like that in the international markets.
Mm.
Um, that's a different scenario because you can change the way that you get repaid. But if you're starting out and you were playing the game under the rules that were set, right? And then now they've changed the rules. Um,
Hmm.
all of a sudden you're screwed because that money is locked away now until you're 60. Or by the time you get to 60, it'll be 70 or 75, or because they'll just change the date on when you can pull money out. Now, that's the compulsory part. The extra contribution part you can take out, I think it's from late 50s. They keep filling with the numbers, but there's times when you can take the money out, but times when you can't because some parts of it get locked up and have to remain inside the fund until certain dates. Um,
Mm.
and that's the part that makes super hard.
Well, Benizi has described Australia's super pool as a national asset.
Well,
Mm.
that's just him saying it's my money.
Yes.
You got to remember that these guys think that every dollar in the economy is theirs.
Mm.
Right? They honestly think that, right? So when you hear the stupid comments from these people, um, it's not because they are misinformed or they're dumb. It's they honestly believe it. All right, you're dealing with people that honestly believe what they're doing is the right thing.
Well, doesn't the government see superannuation capital as capable of supporting your infrastructure, your housing, your
Yeah,
Australian investment, like you just said, and then you've got long-term productive assets?
yeah, but the problem is the government doesn't produce anything that's long term or productive.
Mm.
Right. So the government can only interfere in a market, and we're seeing it in the property market. As soon as the government interferes, it creates uncertainty and then it destroys wealth. So as soon as a government actually does anything, it's a negative on the economy. Very rarely is there something that the government does as a positive. Um, Defense is one positive that I can think of. Um, but other than that, I can't think of anything that actually has a positive effect on a nation.
Mm.
Maybe something in foreign affairs, um, but pretty much everything else can be done by the private sector and can be done better by the private sector. Right. Yes, you set some rules, you set some boundaries, but um, the private sector will do everything better. But the only thing I can't see it doing better is being a military.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, the way I see it, Stephen, it's really important to see the distinction of superannuation because it really doesn't belong to the government, does it?
No.
It is members' retirement money purely and
Yep.
simple. Yeah.
It's money. It's money paid. It's 12% at now. So it's 12% paid by the employer
Mm.
um, to to a fund for future retirement, right? For a teacher folk, purely and simply because um, when Keating and Hawke and the group brought it in, they realized that the pension system was never going to cope with mass amounts of retirement because we're hitting the bell curve of the maximum amount of people that are going to be in the retirement system over the next, I think it's the next 40 years. Um, and the system just won't cope with it at all. It'll, you just won't be able to do it because we don't have an integrated family like a lot of nations in Asia and that, for instance. We
Yeah.
don't have, three generations all living together or sharing or helping. and all
Mm.
that sort of stuff. Um, we don't have that service culture in us.
We certainly
Um,
don't.
no, not at all. Australians are all very individualistic.
We
Um,
are individuals. You can't fool me.
yes, yes, but everyone's getting fooled now.
Mm.
Um, so that's where it is. And one of the other things is, I was sitting at the airport lounge waiting to come back from Newcastle yesterday, and one of the guys there was saying the amount of people, and I've mentioned this before, the amount of people now that see the only secure job as the government.
Mm.
And
What's
um,
people working for the government? What's the percentage people working for the government
oh,
now?
it's like 28% or something now. It keeps growing. Um, I,
Mm.
and there's one of the economists on one of the podcasts I was watching. I can't remember. I think it might have been the Joe Rogan podcast. He had an economist on, and he said, when people start talking about the only reliable job is government, he said that's a leading indicator that your society has collapsed.
Mm.
So, and that's a very till he said all that happened in Cuba, it happened in Venezuela, it happened in all these countries. When people start saying that the only secure job is government, society has collapsed. It's a leading indicator. You haven't seen the collapse of society yet, but
Mm.
it's a guaranteed identifier that society is collapsing.
Well, history speaks for itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
We've seen this all over the world. It's nothing new. The perfect example of this is Berlin. You know, Berlin cut in half, east and west. West flourished. The east died. You know, controlled economy. You know, versus a market economy. Um, what was it? I think in when the World War come down in 1991, there was a wait list for cars in the east, and there was
Mm.
only two cars, and they're basically still the same ones being produced at the end of World War II. And Western Europe, Western Berlin had something like 30 different cars on offer, and all different makes and models, and no wait list, and there was a 10-year wait list in the east. The supermarkets only had the bare basics, probably you know 2 to 3 thousand items, where in the West they had 10 to 15,000 items, right? So it's been proven. We've had these experiments over and over again, and
Mm.
people just, I don't know. Um, uh, yeah, I really don't know how people lose the curiosity to know what's around the corner. So
Too much
must be
sleeping pills.
must be something in the water.
We
Now,
must,
here's a
we
conspiracy
won't
theory
mention
for you.
that, do we, Stephen? What's in the water?
So yeah, well, there's lots in the water. Here's a conspiracy theory for you. The rise of bird flu is so that they can mass vaccinate everyone. I'll leave that with you.
It's-
That was one I heard the other day, and I thought that's an interesting one because one of the most eaten proteins on the planet is chicken,
Mhm.
right? So if you want to force vaccinations and stuff into people, flood the chickens because we'll naturally eat it.
Well, it's easier to me, it's easier to chew and digest. So Stephen, talk to us about super tax changes.
Um, so there is so pretty much at the moment the only major changes are the ones that have already been flagged, right? There's been some around the 3 million, the 10 million rise, um, which increase means that if you've got more than 3 million, the portion above 3 million is now taxed at 30 cents. If you've got more than 10 million, the portion's taxed at 40 cents, the balance is at 15. They are looking at changing the capital gains the way capital gains, because capital gains inside a super fund is treated at 10%. Um, they are talking about making that the same as um, the general, so it'd be indexed inflation, not a flat fee.
Mhm.
Uh, and what was the other one that was uh, mind you, none of this has gone through. These are all the ones that the Greens and that want to push through.
Mhm.
Same with changing grandfathering. So the rules around grandfathering in the capital gains world and that changed. So the original intent in the budget was if you bought a property pre-May 12th, or say pre 1st of July 2027, you would have the old tax changes forever on that property. What come out in the legislation was you only get the old rules up until the 12th of May, um, 20, let's just say 1st of July 2027, because in that year there's a bit of a mixed period. But then from 1st of July 2027 onwards, even the old assets, grandfathered assets,
Mm.
go onto the new system. So it's going to be a nightmare if you sold something that was, let's just say you bought it in 2010, you're going to have 2010 to 2027 um, under the old rules, and then from 2027 onwards, the new rules. So
Mm.
what everyone's asking, and this hasn't been answered yet, is so on the 30th of June 2027, do we have to get full valuations on all assets so that there is a line in the accounts that
Mm.
says this is what the value was of that property on that day for the old rules?
Mm.
And the ATO and no one, even the government, haven't worked out yet whether that's going to be needed or not. Now, if that's going to be needed, holy shit, valuers are going to be one, their prices are going to go through the roof. But two, you won't be able to get a valuer to do any valuations. So it'll
Mm.
be an absolute nightmare. Um, so let's just see where they end up. Uh, but expect more changes to super. They've already flagged that they are going to make more changes to super. I've sort of put it on the back burner until the legislation um, hits Parliament, purely and simply because there is so many um, different versions of what the taxes are going to be that we just don't know yet. But expect changes to super sometime over this next 12 months.
It's a big discussion on that, isn't it? So super is becoming really a larger political battleground at the moment. So
Yeah.
I read that there's three separate debates are now happening. So one, taxation, two, investment direction, and three, access to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so all this crap about we're going to fix intergenerational equity, all they've done is they have fixed intergenerational equity for those that were in the market and had made their wealth prior to the budget, and then everyone else gets screwed, which is pretty much what they've done. Um, so it's a mess. It really is a mess. The more and more that it goes through the ATO's process of bringing regulations out, the more and more we're finding how they're interpreting the explanations that the government and Treasury are given. So
Mm.
yeah, yeah, they're reading stuff one way and not the other. So
Mm.
yeah,
If you can answer this question from Matt, Stephen, do we have
yeah,
a good idea yet on what the best structure is to do investing going forward?
it's going to be companies.
Moving away from trust with corporate trustee?
So this was always my view, and that's mainly because of the international thing is trust should never have been used for tax. They were never designed for tax. Um, what they're for is asset protection. So what I see happening is you will bring all monies up to a holding company, and then the holding company will have a trust with a corporate trustee or just a trust with a normal trustee, it won't matter, um, as its owner. So that gives you the asset protection between yourself and then your asset group. But everything will roll up to a holding company. And if you have a look at how the wealthy do it and have the wealthy have done it forever and a day, that's the structure they've always used. Right. Very few billionaire people and they actually use trusts for taxation purely and simply because they're already in the highest marginal rate. So there's no benefit to them. Where a company fixes your rate at 25 cents if it's an active company or 30 cents in the dollar if it's passive. So that's um, companies have always been. And then you keep all the money running around inside that corporate environment. Yeah. And then an active business is actually the best tax deduction or tax deductible vehicle you can have.
Absolutely live. I've got last question for you, Stephen. Is super simply our retirement money anymore, or has it become one of Australia's most important economic policy tools?
Good question. It depends on where you are and what you're trying to do, right? So if you're going to be an employee, well, you got no choice. So you might as well just use the super system, right? And I would just use a straight industry super fund. They perform probably the best. You're going to get anywhere between what 9 and 10% return, right? Growth. So that's pretty good. If you're at the end of your career, you're going to sell a business, you're going to be able to take advantage of the lump sum contributions into super, and there's some tricks and trades that you can do there, especially if you can go straight into retirement, draw the lump sum and all that. Super is a good vehicle. If you're somewhere in the middle, probably not a good idea.
Mm.
And
Right.
that's just my opinion. That's not financial advice or anything like that. But that's just purely in my opinion. Um, the biggest problem with super is as we're seeing it can be fiddled with. We don't know what the rules of it are going to be, and especially if you're putting it in now and you've got 40 years to wait before you can access it. So you're just not going to know, you know. Because you've got to remember is once money goes into super, it can't come out.
Mm.
So you've got to be willing to leave it there for forever, or until you can access it. And there's a surprising stat. Uh, I think it's mid 40% of people never ever make it to retirement age. They die beforehand.
Mm. I've heard that. Or if
Yeah,
they retire, they drop like that
yeah.
within a
So
few months.
um, it was. I really, oh, can't remember where I saw it, but it was a really. I looked at it and went, because it was part of it. It was in a story. I think there was a part of the super debate, and it basically said for like say 43% of people or whatever the figure was,
Mm.
super's not a good idea because they never get there anyway. They
Mm.
die beforehand. So,
I heard that.
but
What's
it's
the
like,
point of it?
yeah.
Might as
So
well
what's the
spend all
point
your
of it?
money.
What's the point of it for those people? Um, But then again, how do you know if you're in that 43%?
That's true. That's true. Especially with all the A's, the stem cells, and everything that you have disposed of these days.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was in a networking last night meeting all these different funky people, and one of the guys said, "Hey Grace, if you ever need anything, you just come to me. I've got all the different paraphernalia to keep you young. So you just have to inject in your belly. And I'm like, no, I'm allergic to needles. But he said, anyway, there's things that it will keep you at the age of 35. So I'm like, thank you very much.
Yeah. And see, a lot of those treatments aren't available in Australia, but you can
No,
get them overseas and get them in Europe. Uh, sorry, in Asia. Switzerland has some good stuff, but pretty much most of it's all available in Asia if you know where to go.
yeah. Well, you're a few
Well,
weeks away to come to Bali, Stephen.
yes, probably a few more than what I hoped. Um, but we've got another retreat coming up too soon, haven't we?
Yes, we
Yeah.
have. So I've got to sort out my visa for that properly so I don't get
Yes.
out of the country.
Yes, like most other people are doing. Yeah.
Yeah, they're really tough here in Bali. Influencers and all that, they're very strict right now, which is the right to do so.
Well, look, their country,
Mm,
and they've given enough people warning. They've been telling people this for 2 years that
mm,
this is what they're going to do. They're going
mm,
to clamp down on, I call it the bogan person living in Bali doing everything wrong, versus those that truly want to be there and get the right visa and establish their business or whatever they're doing properly,
mhm.
and away you go.
Yeah.
Um, and Yeah, great place. Thailand did it a few years ago. Um, it sort of goes around. Malaysia did it. Malaysia
Mhm.
changed. Dubai's going through the same process with some of their visas and that as well.
Yeah. And
It
we've got a
happened.
retreat coming up in Thailand too, end of November.
We have. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. So,
looking forward to that.
yes.
But well, we come to our end, Stephen. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Any last words of wisdom with everything that's happening around the world, Stephen? Is what's encouragement you can give to the people?
Oh, look, while ever there's all this chaos going, start looking at the edge of where everything's moving. Because where the edge of everything is moving, um, is possibly where all the greatest opportunity is going to be. So um, instead of getting battered pillar to post, in Australia, have you've probably got to have a look overseas.
Mm,
Have a look at all the top billionaires and stuff in Australia, what they're doing, right, and where they're moving and what they're doing, who they're backing, who they're getting behind. Not necessarily what they say, but what they do. Right. So read the articles on what they're doing and what they're buying and where they're positioning themselves, because they'll be getting ready for the next 20-year cycle. What's going to happen? Right. Not the next 3 or 4 minutes. What's going to happen over a longer period? And everyone is moving. Everyone is positioning. Everyone's trying to work out where the next best thing is. And for me, I think it's going to be a massive pivot to Asia. Um, I I really think that Australia is in for some dark times
mm,
over the next 20 years. Um, Asia's in for some really, really good times. Europe, I'd be super wary of. And the US, North America, it's not really going to matter who's in charge over there. They won't change the big pivot that's happened under Trump. They're not going to change too much. So,
welcome to globalization.
yeah, well, globalization is okay
Mm,
um, if it's done in the right way. But sorry, so that's as a country. Right? But you still need to protect what your home strategic advantage is. And the same for an individual, right?
mm,
We live in a globalized world,
mhm.
regardless of what everyone thinks. So
Yeah,
you should be looking and thinking at least on a globalized level.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Stephen. Thanks for your
Not a
wisdom.
problem.
Thanks for the updates. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. And we'll see you in the next 2 weeks and see what happens in the next couple of weeks.
Will do. Thanks, guys.
All right. Good night.
Cheers.